Hi guys, so today we will have another session for our life science class, and this session is entitled Animals Respond to the World. There are two ways wherein animals can respond to their environment. First is through their neurons, which are electrical signals that transmit information from the brain to a particular or a specific tissue or body parts. And the other one is through their hormones or chemical signals. So this session, we will have to discuss what organ systems are responsible for these two types of response. And these are actually, first, we have the nervous system, and the second one is our endocrine system. But before we do that, let's have first the objectives for this session. So what do you need to learn? First, we need to describe the anatomy and physiology of both the nervous and the endocrine system. Second, we have to appreciate the functional relationships of the nervous and endocrine systems in ensuring animal survival. And the third, we will have to relate hormones in how we experience love. Before we go to the highlights of this session, let's have first a short video clip from one of my favorite cartoon episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. Let's watch this.
Morning already? I feel a little funny today.
I have you now.
Time for a well-balanced breakfast. This isn't what I had in mind. Let me just grab my pants. Something must be wrong with my brain. Plankton, what kind of friend are you?
Nonsense. You never liked me anyway. You wouldn't even come to my birthday party.
Get out of my head! Leave my brain alone!
Never. Never.
Now that you have watched the video, what have you observed? That's right, that Mr. Plankton has the control of all the activities of SpongeBob because he had attached a particular remote control to the brain of SpongeBob SquarePants. That's why all the activities of Mr. SpongeBob or Mr. SquarePants have been in control by Mr. Plankton. Have you ever imagined if there is someone controlling your brain? I think that would be a disaster. So this session, we will further understand how the other animals, including us, humans, control our activities and even our metabolic processes through the brain, the nerves, and our hormones. Let's start first by defining what is nervous system. Nervous system is a part of an animal's body that coordinates its behavior and transmits signals between body areas or different parts of the body. However, not all animals have true nervous systems, such as the sponges. In our earlier video, you see that SpongeBob has a brain. But in real life, guys, sponges do not have a brain, they don't have a nerve nets, but they can still respond to their environment or to an external stimuli. That's how amazing sponges are. Among the most complicated or complex animals other than the sponges, experts and scientists have observed 5 evolutionary trends of the nervous system. And the first evolutionary trend could be observed in the group of cnidarians. Cnidarians include the jellyfishes, the hydras, and the sea corals. Cnidarians do not have brain, but they have nerve nets, and the flow of information or signal is somehow bidirectional. When we say bidirectional, it's a two-way direction. The second evolutionary trend could be found or could be observed in flatworms or in roundworms. Here, they have already a primitive brain. These are aggregate neurons, group of neurons in their head region, and they have paired neurons because these organisms are with bilateral symmetry. The third evolutionary trend could be observed in this group of animals. We have the mollusk, the annelids, and the arthropods. These organisms has the ganglia. It's an aggregate group of neurons or nerve cells, which are actually connected or joined with axons located in their appendages. The fourth evolutionary trend could be observed in echinoderms. Echinoderms have three divisions of nerve nets. First, we have the circumoral ring that is in the center of the particular organism, such as the sea stars or the starfishes. And then we have the ossicles, and the last set is actually connected to the tube feet, allowing them to have a centralized coordination for movement. The fifth evolutionary trend could be observed in the group of vertebrates. Vertebrates are more complex. That's why they have a very detailed nervous system and a more complex connections of interneurons. As Stephen Hawking said, we are all connected in the internet like neurons in a giant brain. But what are neurons? Neurons are the basic units of the nervous system. In this diagram, you would see the different parts of a neuron. We have the dendrites that receives the nerve impulse, the cell body, which is the center of the neuron, and where we can find the nucleus of the cell, and the axon, which delivers or transmits the nerve impulse to the next neuron or to the next nerve cell. Now that we know what are neurons, we could answer now the next question: how neurons work. I have here a diagram showing the transfer of nerve impulse from one neuron to another. So first, we'll have a nerve impulse that arrived. This nerve impulse allows or causes the calcium ion channel to open, resulting in an influx of calcium ions in the terminal. After that, synaptic vesicles fuse with the terminal membrane, releasing a neurotransmitter into the gap between neurons known as synaptic cleft. Then, these neurotransmitters bind to the receptors on an ion channels in the photosynaptic membrane, causing them to open. The ions now will flow to the postsynaptic neuron, and then the action potential threshold will be reached. The importance of this process is that we need an adequate amount of calcium ions and potassium and sodium in order for action potential to happen. Since nerve impulses should be transferred quickly, adequate amount of these ions are needed by our body. Did you know that the giant axon of a squid can be 100 to 1,000 times larger than a mammalian axon? The giant axon innervates the squid's mantle muscle. These muscles are used to propel the squid through the water. So if we're going to allow a squid in our swimming team, I think the swimming team will win. Now let's have the anatomy of the nervous system in all vertebrates. Nervous system is divided into two. We have the central nervous system, which is composed of your spinal cord and the brain. And we have the peripheral nervous system, which is composed of the motor nerves and the sensory nerves. Let's have first the central nervous system. CNS includes the brain, which is divided into two. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Another part of your CNS or the central nervous system is the spinal cord. It connects the brain to the body parts, and it is responsible for the spinal reflex reactions with the help of our spinal nerves. Spinal nerves are related to the segments in the trunk and tail of vertebrates. Let's have now the spinal cord. The spinal cord is composed of the meninges or a membrane for protection, white matter. It is a group of axons which transfer or transmit nerve impulse from one neuron to another, and then the gray matter which are composed of the dendrites that receive those nerve impulses. Spinal cord is protected by cerebrospinal fluid. Diagram show spinal cord of the different species or animal. Let's have now the brain. The brain is further divided into three. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain has two parts, which are the telencephalon and the diencephalon. Telencephalon has the cerebrum, which is divided into two hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. This cerebrum functions for intuition in mammals such as humans. Diencephalon has these parts. We have the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal gland. For the thalamus, it's the one responsible for our senses. For the hypothalamus, it's the one responsible for our body temperature, our sexual drive, our feelings such as hunger and thirst. The pituitary gland is the one responsible for signaling other endocrine glands. That's why it is called the master gland of the body. Later, we will have to understand how the pituitary gland becomes the master gland of our body. The pineal gland is for rhythm and other motor activities of an animal. The midbrain or the mesencephalon is the one responsible for the touch, hearing, and for visual. And the last division of our brain is the hindbrain. The hindbrain has the pons and the cerebellum, and of course the medulla oblongata. For the pons, it is a bridge that connects the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The cerebellum is an outgrowth of the medulla oblongata, which is also responsible for motor. In fishes, cerebellum are larger, especially to those organisms that are active swimmers. They need this in order for them to swim faster or quicker. The medulla oblongata is located in the posterior end of our brain. This functions for breathing and for cardiovascular function. It is also the one that connects the anterior end of our spinal cord to our brain. I have here a diagram showing the sizes of the cerebrum in the different species of animals. For the humans, it has the largest cerebrum and is highly convoluted. When you say convoluted or it has convolutions, convolutions are folds in the brain of a particular animal. This allows the transfer of nerve impulses to be quicker. The peripheral nervous system is composed of two divisions. We have the somatic, voluntary, and the autonomic, which is of voluntary. For the somatic, voluntary, or motor nerves, examples are our skeletal actions, skeletal muscles, how we talk, or actions of walking, running, or even eating. For autonomic nervous system, this is involuntary. It is further divided into two. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Examples of involuntary actions in our body are our cardiac muscles, the movement of our cardiac muscles, particularly the beating of our heart, our respiration, our digestion, or the contraction of muscles in our stomach. Those are examples of involuntary actions. Now, let's understand the function of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system or peripheral nervous system. Here, I have a diagram showing the functions of the two. In the sympathetic nervous system or peripheral nervous system, it is somehow responsible for the maintenance of the homeostasis or balance in our body. So, for example, you see a particular event that makes you excited and happy. What the parasympathetic nervous system will do, since when you are happy and excited, your heartbeat increased, right? So, or speed up. So, what the parasympathetic nervous system would do, it will slow down your heartbeat in order for your body to maintain balance. So, another example is that when your bladder is already full, your sympathetic nervous system will be the one responsible for the emptying of or the delay of the emptying of your bladder. However, for the parasympathetic, it's the one responsible for emptying now your bladder. The second part of this session is about the endocrine system. What is endocrine system? Endocrine system is a system that works for long-term regulation of disturbances by producing hormones. In invertebrates, most of them rely in the release of what we call as neuropeptides. These neuropeptides are released from the neurosecretory cells and functions for growth, reproduction, particularly maturation of egg cells and the sperm cells of the invertebrates, or what we call as gonadal development. When you say gonad, these are sex cells. For water reabsorption, for some species, such as the flatworms and the roundworms, and of course, osmoregulatory hormones for the annelids or the segmented worms. In some bivalves, scientists found out that they can produce a hormone that is similar to the hormones of the humans, and that is insulin. Insulin is the one responsible for blood sugar regulation in our body. Another function of these neuropeptides secreted from neurosecretory cells of invertebrates is what we call as molting. I have here a diagram showing the process of molting in an insect life or in an insect life cycle, or simply metamorphosis. So here, there is the presence of the appropriate stimulus. This stimulus would have interpreted or will be interpreted by the central nervous system. Then, neurosecretory cells of the brain produce the hormone called ecdystrophin. This hormone will go now to the corpora cardiaca and will stimulate the prothoracic gland to produce the ecdysone. Then, molting will be initiated. Now let's have the vertebrates. Vertebrates has two kinds of or types of glands. We have the exocrine gland, which is sending or secreting chemicals into a duct, such as our sweat gland. Here, so this is the sweat gland. It releases or secretes the sweat in a duct to the pores of our skin. And the other gland is what we call as the endocrine gland. Endocrine glands secrete hormones within the bloodstream, directly in our blood. So if these are the endocrine cells, they secrete the hormones into the bloodstream to the target tissues or parts of the body. Hormones became important regulatory agents following the evolution of circulatory systems that could carry hormones from one part of the body to another. And these hormones are released from the endocrine glands. We have the pancreas, adrenal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid, ovaries, testes, and the parathyroid gland. Now let's understand who's in charge or who's responsible for the release of different hormones in our body. Let's have first the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is divided into two. We have the posterior and the anterior pituitary gland. For the anterior pituitary gland, these are the hormones that could be released in this gland. We have the follicle-stimulating hormone to stimulate the ovaries and the testes, luteinizing hormone to release the ovum or the egg cell, and for girls or for female, it is also the one responsible for the release of testosterone. That's why some females or some girls, they have secondary characteristics or third characteristics of the male organism. Next, we have the adrenocorticotropic hormone, responsible for the stimulation of the adrenal cortex, the growth hormone for the bone and the muscle growth, the thyroid stimulating hormone that stimulates the thyroid, prolactin, this one is only released when the female is actually lactating. This is responsible for milk secretion, or if the female organism is pregnant. For the posterior pituitary, it releases two hormones. We have the oxytocin, which is also what we call as a happy hormone, and responsible for the uterus contraction, and the vasopressin, which is now responsible for reabsorption of water. The next gland is our thyroid gland. Thyroid release two hormones as well. We have the thyroid hormone for metabolic rate and calcitonin, which lowers blood calcium. For our parathyroid gland, it is the one responsible for the release of the PTH or the parathyroid hormone. This hormone acts to increase the blood calcium in our body. The next gland is the adrenal gland, which is divided into two. We have the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. For the adrenal cortex, hormone released from there is the aldosterone. It increases the sodium ions and it is for water reabsorption. The adrenal medulla has two hormones. We have the epinephrine and the norepinephrine. These two hormones are known as the fight and flight hormone. It increases the blood sugar and our heart rate. It's the one responsible when we can carry large or heavier objects when we're afraid, terrified, or excited. For the next gland, we have the pancreas. Okay. For the next gland, we have the pancreas. Pancreas is also part of the digestive system, but it is also an endocrine gland. Hormones from the pancreas include the insulin, which decreases the blood sugar, and the glucagon, which increases the blood sugar concentration of our body. Next, we have the testes. The testes release or secretes the hormone testosterone, and it promotes secondary male characteristics or spermatogenesis, or the development of the sperm cell. And the last gland or endocrine gland is of course the ovaries in the female. Ovaries release two hormones. We have the estrogen and the progesterone. For the estrogen, it's the one responsible for the female secondary characteristics, and for progesterone, it is the one responsible for maintaining the endometrial lining in the uterus of a female organism. Now, how the nervous system and the endocrine system works. So let's have now an example of a positive and a negative feedback, which take place with the help of the hypothalamus of the nervous system and the pituitary gland of the endocrine system. Here, there is a release TRH. TRH, or the thyrotropin releasing hormone. This hormone is responsible to stimulate the pituitary gland for it to release the TSH, or the thyroid stimulating hormone. When the TSH is released, thyroid secretes thyroxine, enabling the metabolic rate to increase. When there is an increased metabolic rate, there is an increased negative feedback. So what will the brain do? Particularly the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus now will release less TRH and will signal the pituitary gland to release less thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. Then what will the thyroid do? The thyroid now will secrete less thyroxine, enabling the metabolic rate to increase, thus having a decreased negative feedback. Another example of maintaining homeostasis is the regulation of glycogen and glucose through the secretion of insulin and glucagon. This is a diagram showing the positive and the negative feedback of the regulation of blood sugar. The brain, particularly the hypothalamus, will detect the imbalance in the body. It will now signal the pituitary gland to release a hormone that stimulates the pancreas in order for the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin is the one that decreases, as we have discussed earlier, that decreases the blood sugar in the body, maintaining now the glucose concentration in the bloodstream. Whenever the body has a very low concentration of blood sugar, pancreas will now secrete the hormone glucagon. If you are in love right now, are you using your brain or you want to use your heart? Or simply, you want to use your brain to protect your heart? Let's understand the science of lust, love, and attraction. For the first stages of love, we feel that we are attracted to the person physically. That's actually lust. Lust is a stage wherein we wanted to see the person, and somehow it gives us the high urge of sexual drive. The one responsible for lust is the hormones testosterone and estrogen. But after some time, you feel that this person, when you get to know the person, you are actually attracted not just to the physical appearance of the person, but to the whole being of the person. You are somehow having the level of attraction and excitement, which is actually acted upon another hormone, and that is the dopamine. The dopamine is released from the hypothalamus of the brain. It is also what we call as a happy hormone. And of course, the norepinephrine, or the fight or flight hormone, is released in the adrenal gland of our body. The norepinephrine gives us the idea, or the feel-good idea or excitement whenever we see the person we're attracted to. But sometimes, when we see the person with another person, or another girl, or another boy, we feel jealous. That is the function, or the one responsible for that is the decreased level of serotonin. If we remain attracted to the person, we can be now on the next stage of attraction, and that is attachment. Here, there are two hormones responsible for such feeling of attachment to the person. We have the oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, and the vasopressin. These two hormones are released also from the hypothalamus of the brain. Let's have hugot time! Ang love, parang bayad yan sa jeep. Minsan, hindi nasusuklian. What if, just like the quotations or the hugot line, your love or your attraction to the person is not reciprocated by that person, or simply hindi ka crush ng crush mo? What will happen? You will feel down and you will feel sad. That means the serotonin and the dopamine levels in your body is now decreasing. But too much of it, too much dopamine in the body, or too much oxytocin in the body, could also be dangerous for us. The ideal level of dopamine and oxytocin in the body will not just lead us to lust, attraction, and attachment, but eventually to love. That's why it is rightful to say to the person, or to the one that we love them from the bottom of our hypothalamus. That's the end of the session. I hope you guys have enjoyed this session, and thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. And tomorrow, just like today, the moon, the bear, and the big blue house will be waiting for you to come and play. To come and play. To come and play. Bye now.